It's a really great question. So the incidence of aortic dissections is a little bit hard to understand. I mean, we have population studies that put them at about 5 in 100,000 people. So if you extrapolate that to the general population, that's 15 to 20,000 dissections per year. That many of us believe is grossly underestimated because oftentimes dissections result in sudden death. As you also know, the autopsy rate in the U.S. has declined significantly over the past couple decades. So the true uh, cause of someone's sudden death is oftentimes not ever found out. I have many patients in my practice who have a heritable aortic condition where they have an aortic dissection or they have elective surgery to prevent an aortic dissection. And if you go through their family history, it's, well, my dad died of heart problems early, never got an autopsy. Grandpa died of heart problems early, never got an autopsy. Well, those are probably uncounted aortic dissections. So we know the number to be at least in that 15 to 20,000 in the US, at least per year. I would say that of those, probably 10 to 20% are heritable conditions, genetic conditions, whereas the rest are sporadic, meaning they came from hypertension, smoking, atherosclerotic, arterial disease. There are family clues. So we, as an aortic center, of course, me and my team, that's what we do, is we really dig into the family history. So you will, like I said, find clues if you start looking. But about, like if you just say 20% of these aortic dissections that happen per year are not from a sporadic or, from an acquired disease, but from a genetic one, you will find a lot of family history if you dig deep enough. Most people think of the genetic conditions like Marfan syndrome and things like that as being patients that have phenotypically obvious signs of a connective tissue disorder, whereas we find that is almost certainly the minority of patients that have an inherited genetic aortic condition. Many of them you'd never know by looking at them. You'd only really know by digging into their family history, which is why, for instance, our center, we have a dedicated cardiac genetic counselor that we may not have the time to get thoroughly into the family tree that we want to here in a very, very busy office. However, we have a dedicated genetic counselor, and that's literally what she does. And she, can generate a beautiful family history, from interviewing the patients. Yeah, I would say the biggest misconception is that everyone who has a genetic aortopathy looks phenotypically Marfanoid, as we would say, tall, long facial features, arachnodactyly, the classical things that we think about in terms of, either Ehlers-Danlos, Marfan's, Louis Dietz. I will say that the majority of my patients that have genetic abnormalities that would explain their aneurysms or history of dissection, in fact, you'd never be able to pick it up on physical exam. And then there's about half of them where you get the genetics and then you look at the patient, you're like, oh yeah, I could kind of see some of those features, but there are a lot of, and some of the most virulent forms of genetic aortopathy have no other physical phenotypical features. It's just this aggressive history of aneurysm growth and dissections. Yeah, that's a great question. So the problem with screening for aortic disease, we don't have a mammogram, we don't have a PSA, we don't have a population study test to look for aneurysms in all people. However, people that have a obvious family history, or say if you pick up the fact that someone in the family, an uncle, grandpa, something had an aortic dissection, you know I usually always start with an echo. Um, there are, depending on the patient's age and other things that we're looking at, MRA can be excellent. There are there's several different ways to pick up an aneurysm. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. The echocardiogram will give you functional status about their valve, because remember that aortopathy often goes with bicuspid valves. For instance, bicuspid valves are a lot more prevalent in the population than aortic dissections are. We think bicuspid valves could be 1 or more% of the population with a bicuspid valve. Oftentimes that will be picked up by a provider hearing a murmur, and that leads them to an echo, and then the echo shows a suggestion of a root aneurysm. Then they get sent to a center like ours, and depending on the size of that, depending on the function of their valve, we might send them for an MRI or a CT scan. I would say that the CT scan with contrast, that's your absolute best, most perfect resolution. we use that for surgical planning, obviously, and for people who are right on the cusp of needing surgery. That's going to give us that millimeter by millimeter granularity we're looking for. However, in our young patients, we don't want to be getting ionizing radiation study every 6 months. So MRI or MRA might be a better study. Echocardiograms are great if you're also looking at the valve function. However, I don't generally trust the numbers on an echocardiogram to monitor subtle growth in an aneurysm, simply because the variation of where the probe is held and the angle you're getting the aorta. Remember, these are, especially in the aortic root, these are complex structures. They're not always just tubes. The aortic root looks like a 3-leaf clover or a 2-leaf clover if you have a bicuspid valve sometimes, and it's not easy to standardize that measurement across studies. So that's where we'll go for a cross-sectional imaging, as you mentioned, MRI or CT scan. Well, we have the IRAD registry. IRAD data is where we sort of get a lot of our information from, this International Registry of Aortic Dissection. So we do know that hypertension is probably the most modifiable risk factor of, again, we're talking about non-inherited aneurysmal disease of the aorta. So, hypertension, smoking, these are the big ones. There is some link to possibly excessive isometric heavy lifting that's been much less proven. I would say hypertension is your biggest, bang for your buck. If you have a patient who's at risk for an aneurysm or has an aneurysm, aggressive blood pressure control is the cornerstone of treatment of preventing that aneurysm from enlarging. So when we know or suspect aneurysmal disease to be a genetic or inherited condition, this is where we rely heavily on our genetic team. Okay, so we have every patient, really anyone who has an aneurysm under 60, even if you know that that's from hypertension and smoking or whatever, anyone who comes in under 60 with an aneurysm of significant size, we automatically send for a genetic screening. That includes an aortopathy panel, which looks at all the genes that we know to be linked with the connective tissues that can lead to aneurysmal disease. But also, most importantly, is that strong family history screening that you'll get from someone who has expertise in that. So our genetics partners also will help us reach out, and if we know, for instance, let's say we have a patient of ours, we know there to be a gene, a particular gene involved, or defective gene, or even a variation of unknown significance, we have VUS, we call it. We can then do targeted screening on first degree relatives, because these genetic panels can be expensive. They can be not so covered by insurance. So for instance, if I know that my patient has this particular genetic abnormality, we can do a targeted screen of just the first degree relatives looking for that. Or more importantly, we can do an echo or an MRI or a CAT scan to maybe screen their aorta. So the thing to remember with aortic dissections, these are highly lethal. These should be thought of like a STEMI or a stroke, right? Like, these patients seem to be, there's a golden hour, or if you look at the risk of death from a dissection, it's several percentage per hour. It's at least 1% per hour. So the time matters. We've gotten very, very good at elective aneurysm repair. So the chance of dying from an elective surgery of an aneurysm that's either past the size where we'd operate, or if it's growing rapidly, or if there's an aggressive family history. I have a patient recently, their dad, passed away from a dissection. We went and got the autopsy report from another hospital, and we saw that the size of the father's aneurysm was much smaller than our cutoff when his father passed away. So that is prompting us to intervene much earlier on our patient, knowing that we can't wait until the standard 5 centimeters or whatever from, because this is a different kind of dissection risk. So all that to say, we want to get people into elective surgery when the time is right, because the survival of elective aneurysm repair in most patients is under 1%, the mortality risk, so 99+% survival. Whereas a dissection, early data showed 75% survival. I would say in expert aortic centers these days, we're closer to 90%, but I mean, who'd go for 90% if you could go for 99%? So that is, recognizing these early and getting them in for surgery electively is the best way to treat these, other than the things we talked about, preventing them from progressing, such as hypertension management, smoking cessation, et cetera. It's a really good question. And, we're spending a lot of time talking about the inherited conditions, which is, that one's a little easier because my message to all primary care providers would be, family history, screening for family history is so important. If someone picks up, uh, an inherited aortic condition and those patients get recognized early, they get put into a center like ours, they can be screened with multiple different modalities, genetic testing, cross-sectional imaging, et cetera. And we have a very, very high rate of catching that aneurysm before it becomes an adverse aortic event, dissection, rupture, tear of some kind. That for the inherited conditions, the family history may be the most important. I would say also the simple physical exam. You wouldn't believe the number of patients we get. Again, bicuspid disease. So bicuspid valves, again, present in up to, around 1% of the population. In first degree relatives of the bicuspid valve, it's up to 8%. So an 8-fold increase in bicuspid valve prevalence in first degree relatives. So bicuspid valves go hand in hand with aneurysms for many different reasons. So sometimes just picking up a simple murmur or saying, oh, my dad had a bicuspid valve, so I thought I'd get checked out. They go get an echo, and then sure enough, they have an aneurysm and a bicuspid valve as well. So, family history for dissections is a little bit more obvious, but I would say family history of bicuspid valves, if that is known, is also extremely important. Again, bicuspid valves have such a they share such a high space, there's such a big overlap between bicuspid valves and aneurysms that is also something that they can be picked up and screened on. In terms of the acquired aortic aneurysmal disease, that's a little tougher. I wish we had a PSA or a mammogram for that. I will say though that, for instance, smoking's a risk factor for aneurysm formation. Most people, their primary care, if they have a smoking history, will send them for lung cancer screening, low dose, CT scans without contrast to look for lung cancer. A huge number of our patients come in because, hey, guess what? You don't have lung cancer, but you do have an aneurysm. Go see these people. That is, that's a big percentage of our patients that get diagnosed with this. The other one would be calcium scores. Again, there's not a real role for that in everyone, but that's becoming a very popular screening tool, especially they've lowered the cost out of pocket. A lot of people will go get a calcium score. Many of them are happy to hear that their calcium score is 0, unhappy to learn that they have a 4.5 centimeter aorta. So it's hard to, standardize those type of scans, but with the advent of screening things like that, we are picking up more and more things. I'm, very biased. I think everyone in the world should have an echo at least once, but I'm also a heart surgeon. So yeah, it's hard to implement that, but a lot of them get picked up on echoes as well. So.